Alright guys, it is now time for my Week 7 picks of the 2022 NFL season. And of course, last week I went 8-6. Oh boy. I think I'm having like one of the worst seasons so far since I've done this back in 2016. One losing season, a 500 record, and barely over 500 all my weeks except week 4, and that wasn't even my best. Normally I like to have 75%. Definitely disappointing results, as this season has been very unpredictable as we see so far. And of course, here is the playoff stands in the regular season if the season ended today. In the AFC, it's the Bills with the bye, with Colts at Chiefs, Jets at Titans, and Chargers at Ravens. And in the NFC, it's the Eagles with the bye, with Rams at Vikings, Cowboys at Buccaneers, and Giants at 49ers. And if the season ended today, I have the Super Bowl being the Bills and the Eagles. So now let's get to our Week 7 picks. Start off with Thursday night, as it'll be the Saints at Cardinals for the first time since 2016. Saints won the last two. The Cardinals haven't beaten them since 2015, as they're both 2-4. Saints had a hard-fought game, but just could not beat the Bengals in the end. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, their really good offense all season was shut down by the Seahawks' terrible defense. What? That makes no sense whatsoever that they lost that way, as they've now lost 2 in a row. Both teams desperately need to get the win here to get the 3-4. Man, that's a tough one to pick. But I think I might just edge out on the Cardinals. But I guess I won't be surprised if the Saints get it. Then we get to Sunday action with a big one to AFC North. And if the Bengals lose, this is the lead in the AFC North on the line. As the Browns are at the Ravens. The Browns won the last one. The Ravens haven't beaten them since 2021. And the Browns haven't won in Baltimore since 2019. As the Browns got completely destroyed by the Patriots, like 38-15, as Jacoby Brissett played absolutely horrible. Meanwhile, the Ravens, once again, choking away another game as they've won and lost one, as they're 3-3, losing to the Giants, as they're barely leading the division by a tiebreaker. This game could go either way, as we've seen the last few years when the Browns visit the Ravens. They actually put up a hard-fought fight. But I'm going to pick the Ravens still first one. But I guess I won't be surprised if the Browns get it. But like I said, division on the line if the Bengals lose. Then it's the Buccaneers at Panthers. As the Buccaneers won the last 4. The Panthers haven't beaten them since 2019. And they haven't won at home since 2018. So the Buccaneers lost to Steelers, which I warned you all beforehand. The Steelers, just like they always lose against teams that they're supposed to win, they've also beaten teams that they should be losing to. And they did that, beating the Buccaneers. Meanwhile, the Panthers lost to the Rams, even though at one point it was very close, going up against the defending champs, as the Panthers right now have the worst record in the league, as nothing is really going in their favor. I'm picking the Buccaneers for this one, but be worried, you're not doing so well yourself, Buccaneers. Then a big out-of-conference matchup as the Falcons are at the Bengals for the first time since 2014. The Bengals won the last 2. Falcons haven't beaten them since 2010, and they haven't won in Cincinnati since 1971. So the Falcons, for some reason the team that they played will not come to my head, so I feel stupid. Meanwhile, the Bengals beat the Saints. Oh yeah, now I remember, the Falcons beat the 49ers pretty convincingly too. That was surprising. And then the Bengals, of course, beat the Saints on a last-second field drive. Got barely pulled that out. I'm picking the Bengals for this one, but hey, I guess you can't underestimate the Falcons either in this situation. Both teams trying to get over 500. Then it's the Lions at the Cowboys for the first time since 2018. The Cowboys won the last 3. The Lions haven't beaten them since 2013. They haven't won in Arlington since 2011. So the Lions, of course, were on their bye as they got shut out by the Patriots 2 weeks ago. Like I said earlier in the year, you cannot rely on that elite offense to carry your terrible defense. Eventually, it's going to come back to bite you. And boy, did it, as they got obliterated by the Patriots, as they're not looking really good in that regard. Meanwhile, the Cowboys suffered their first loss with Coop, as the Eagles beat them. And Dak is going to come back in this game. Not sure if they should be forcing him to come back or not. Maybe they should wait a little bit. After all, it is the line, so surely Coop could be able to do it. But Dak is going to be playing today, so I'm going to pick the Cowboys for this one. Then it's the Giants at the Jaguars for the first time since 2014. The Jaguars won the last 2. The Giants haven't beaten them since 2010. They haven't won in Jacksonville since 1997. So desperately want to get that win there. So anyways, the Giants, they're now 5-1. They've beaten their win total from last year unbelievably as they beat the Ravens, as they're being a surprise team right now with an elite defense and really good rushing attack. Meanwhile, the Jaguars had a hard-fought fight against the Colts, but just couldn't pull it off yet, as they've now lost 3 in a row. This maybe could be a get-right game for them, though. I'm sure the Giants remember what happened in 2014 when they last visited here. So, even though stats look better in the Giants, I'm actually going to pick the Jaguars in an upset. Can't really see the Giants going 6-1. Alright, then next up is Colts at Titans, with the division on the line, as the Titans won the last 4. The Colts haven't beaten them since 2020. So the Colts finally offensively looked good for once as they beat the Jaguars to get over 500 for the first time this year. Meanwhile, the Titans were on their bye as they barely held on to beat the Commanders as their defense got that interception in the end. Their offensive stats look terrible, but don't forget that was because mostly they're on the bye. So it's underinflated as their defense is overrated in that regard too. So this will be a hard-fought game with the division on the line. And of course, the Colts statistically look better, but they can't beat the Titans for some reason. They just can't do it. As they've now lost 4 in a row. And this is a tough one. So I think I might have to pick the Titans for this one with the momentum and history on their line. Even though the Colts should be better. And then we get to the Packers at the Commanders for the first time since 2016. The Packers won the last 2. The Commanders haven't beaten them since 2018. And the Packers haven't won in Landover since 2004. So, the Packers, you lost to the Jets in a blowout. That is officially red flag. Bad enough you lost to the Giants in London, but hey, the Giants are playing good right now and it was 5 points. Here, you lost to the Jets and got blown out at home. Absolutely terrifyingly bad in that regard. Definitely not looking good. Meanwhile, the Commanders, they beat the Bears on Thursday night barely to get their first win after a 4-game losing streak. The problem with the Packers, too, is, like I said, they haven't beaten the Commanders in Landover since 2004. And even though they've not only struggled against the Commanders when they visit them, they've also, the last few years, even though the Packers were superior, they've had to put up a hard-fought fight in against them in Lambeau, remember, last year in 2019. So the Commanders obviously have some sort of thing going against the Packers in this regard. So you know what? Maybe an upset. I'm going to pick the Commanders for this one. Alright, so now we get to the 4 p.m. games. Starting off with the Jets at Broncos for the second year in a row. As the Broncos won the last 2, the Jets haven't beaten them since 2018. And the Broncos they haven't won in Denver since 2010. So the Jets humiliated the Packers. They've now matched their win total from last year, even though Zach Wilson has not really been playing that good, barely even game manager role. As the Broncos lost to the Chargers, not keeping that 10-year thing I said earlier going, as they're looking terrible as well. Definitely not looking good in that regard. Looking like maybe another possible upset for the Jets, maybe to get over 5 wins. But I'm still going to pick the Broncos for this one. I'm still not fully convinced on the Jets unless Zach Wilson actually shows up. Alright, so then it's the Texans at the Raiders for the first time since 2016. As the Texans won the last one, the Raiders haven't beaten them since 2016. And the Texans haven't beaten the Texans at home. No, the Texans haven't won on the road against the Raiders since 2014, back when they were in Oakland. So, of course, the Texans were on their bye from last week when they beat the Jaguars to get their first win of the year, as they look terrible. But, of course, that's the bye we're talking about, too. Meanwhile, the Raiders, hard-fought game against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago on Monday night, but they just couldn't pull it out in the end. Very impressive job how they did that one. Very impressive loss. So, I'm going to pick the Raiders for this one. And then we get to a big outer-conference matchup, as the Seahawks are at the Chargers for the first time since 2014. Chargers won the last 2. The Seahawks haven't beaten them since 2010, and they haven't won on the road since 2002. So, the Seahawks beat the Cardinals in a defensive slugfest with their horrible defense. Actually allowed the Cardinals only 9 points. What? Who would have thought at this point in the year the Seahawks would be at 500 still and right in the mix for the playoffs? Hell, in the NFC West too. They're tied right now. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, the Chargers have now won 3 in a row. Although it was an ugly fought game against the Broncos, they still got the win in the end as they're in the playoff race too. This game, because they're both defenses are really bad, maybe this will be an offensive shootout. And if that's the case, I think I'm going to trust the Chargers still for this one. But don't underestimate the Seahawks. They've been underestimated so far this year. Then we get to our first rematch of Super Bowl 54, I think it was, as the Chiefs are at the 49ers for the first time since 2014. Chiefs won the last one. The 49ers haven't beaten them since 2014. And the Chiefs haven't won in Santa Clara since 1971, back when they were in San Francisco. So, huge matchup here as the Chiefs, hard-fought game, but just could not beat the Bills as their Mahomes shat the bed with that interception at the end. But they're still really strong, even though their defense has been horrible. Meanwhile, the 49ers got humiliated by the Falcons last week as they're the reverse of the Chiefs, where they have one of the best defenses in the league, and their offense is pretty bad. So, will the 49ers get their revenge from the Super Bowl loss 3 years ago? Or will the Chiefs continue to just go downfield easily, except the Bills last week, to get the wins? This will be interesting, but I think I'm going to pick the Chiefs still for this one. But hey, don't underestimate the 49ers. Alright, then we get to Sunday night, which should never have been picked in the first place, as the Steelers are at the Dolphins for the first time since 2016. Steelers won the last one. The Dolphins haven't beaten them since 2016. And the Steelers haven't won in Miami since 2010. So the Steelers finally ended their 4-game losing streak as they beat the Buccaneers pretty convincingly. And statistically, all around, the Steelers might be one of the worst teams in the league. Offense is horrible, and their defense is very horrible. Meanwhile, the Dolphins have now lost 3 in a row. Hard-fought game, though, against the Vikings. We got to give them credit for that. Keep it within 8 points, I think it was. But it wasn't enough in the end, as they now lost 3 in a row. And Tua is finally coming back after his concussion fiasco. He might be rusty. And honestly, outside of the Ravens game, he still hasn't been really that good if you look at his stats. Like 2 touchdowns, I think 2 or 3 interceptions. So he's definitely going to have to play better in that regard. This can go either way. And the Steelers, like I said, historically struggle when they visit the Dolphins, even when the Dolphins aren't really good. But you know what? Probably an upset. I'm going to actually pick the Steelers for this one because I don't trust the Dolphins right now. And then finally we wrap it up with Monday night as a game that should never have picked either, as the Bears are at the Patriots for the first time since 2014. Patriots won the last 5. The Bears haven't beaten them since 2000, and they've never won in Foxborough ever. Hoping to try and make that on Monday night, the first time. So anyways, the Bears offense looks horrible as they lost to the Commanders on a few inches getting the win to get the 500. Meanwhile, the Patriots, they've now recovered from their slow starters. They're now 3-3 after destroying the Browns, as they're looking like a solid team once again. Kind of like going for the same thing they had to go through last year at the beginning of the year. So yeah, I'm picking the Patriots for this one, obviously. Alright, so those are my picks for Week 7. I cannot wait for Saints at Cardinals tonight. So we'll start off with my picks to recap it off. Cardinals over the Saints, Ravens over the Browns, Buccaneers over the Panthers, Bengals over the Falcons, Cowboys over the Lions, Jaguars over the Giants, Titans over the Colts, Commanders over the Packers, Broncos over the Jets, Raiders over the Texans, Chargers over the Seahawks, Chiefs over the 49ers, Steelers over the Dolphins, and finally Patriots over the Bears. So see you guys next time for Week 8.